I want you to get together.
Can you do an episode on marijuana? I already have. It's I think I can't remember. I think it's called like it's time. I think it's time or something like that. It's about how you should quit. I used to do it a lot myself, 8 years straight. And I quit. I think I quit in 2016 or 18. I think it was 2016. I think I cut down tobacco in 2016. Then I went cold turkey in 2018 after lowering the cannabis. Um, but I haven't touched the stuff in like 8 years now. I'm clean. It's it's not necessarily evil in and of itself, but it makes you okay with doing nothing. And you, before you know it, 10 years of your life can will have passed, and you won't even have blinked. And you can equate that to the cannabis and messing with your perception of time. And you wouldn't have gone anywhere. You wouldn't have changed or moved or progressed in any way. It makes you waste your life. I know it sounds cliche, but it quite literally does that to you. And it makes you okay with it. It's also a suppressant of mental traumas and things you should be dealing with and moving on from and processing. Every time you spark up a joint, you're kicking that can down the road. I'll deal with it later. And then before you know it, it's 8 years have passed, and you have this repressed trauma you never dealt with still there, like unprocessed and ready to rear its ugly head at any moment and make you lash out at the people you love and do anything stupid. You know, it needs dealing with. But cannabis is an easy out. You know, it's easy. It makes things easier, but it certainly doesn't make things better. I'd say that. Like when I quit, you know, I started to dream again, and all the things I kind of ignored, all the mistakes I'd made, the people I'd hurt, the people who would hurt me, the things I needed to deal with, all came at once. I remembered all of a sudden, you know, and I had some stuff, some personal work I needed to do. I needed to be a better person. You know, I'd been running away from that for so long and self-medicating that I kind of forgot what had happened, you know, and I forgot my childhood until I quit, and suddenly it all came back to me. I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. I need to deal with that, you know, and lost relationships, you know, rather than confronting these people, you it's easy just to ignore it, isn't it, and get high instead. And it's kind of, and you know, some people need to do it for medical reasons again. So I'm not like saying it's evil inherently, but there also comes a point, doesn't there, where you're not in control anymore. I know I was smoking to be sober. It didn't get me high anymore. I was just smoking so I could be normal. Like, in fact, being sober for me was the trip. You know, that was a different consciousness. Being high was the norm. That's the issue. You know, when you've crossed that threshold, that boundary, you need to look at yourself in the mirror and think, is this right? Is this really what I want for myself? Is this healthy? And the answer is obviously no. But you'll do anything you can to kind of justify it. Because you think, oh, it's not that serious. You know, it's only weed. It's never killed anybody, has it? What's the big deal? So what if I like to get high? Everybody has everyone has a vice. This is just mine. I mean, it's better than alcohol, right? You know, I don't drink. Like, at least I'm not drinking alcohol. That stuff kills people, you know. It's kind of, you do all these things, don't you, to justify it. I know, because I've been there. I've done it. It's like, oh, people who don't smoke weed are just weird, just losers, man. They're lame. They don't get it. They don't get it like I get it. Only, you know, if you meet somebody else that gets high, it's like, yeah, you get it, man. You know, you're like me. You understand. Those other people, them over there, they don't understand like we do, you know. And you get into that mindset, don't you? It's us and them, and I guess it's pride again, isn't it? It's hubris. But it's not. None of it's true. It's all just stuff you made up in your head to justify your addiction. Basically, it's not. It's not real. And you know what you have work to do. But again, it's just easier just to I'll just get high instead. You know, and that's the problem with cannabis, because it isn't immediately like, it's not going to kill you. You're right, It's not, you're not going to get these detrimental health effects, which are like obvious, like, oh man, every time I smoke this joint, my skin's falling off it more and more. It's not like that, it's not visible so much physically that it's doing something to you, but psychologically speaking, it really is. And it's like a death by 1,000 joints, to paraphrase an old adage there. It's kind of, before you know it, you're 50 and you've been high since you were 18 and you don't remember any of it. You blinked and your life has passed because you don't process time right when you're in that psychedelic mindset, which cannabis is a psychedelic. And when you're on psychedelics, time is an illusion. It's all one by that point. It blends together. There's no difference between 5 minutes worth of time or 10 or 5 hours to you, to your perceptions. Passage of time doesn't exist. Like, it's all now. So you're always in the now. Never the thinking about the future, or never worrying about the future or thinking about the past, because the past doesn't exist and neither does the future. It's just ideas in our minds. All there is here and now. And again, it's good to gain that perspective. It's useful to have that perception for a short while to understand the nature of reality, and that time really is an illusion, and how we shouldn't let it be the be all and end all to dictate how we move through our existence. I get all that. There's things to be learned, but it can be easily abused, especially by those who have been abused or are running away from something. And that's the issue. And it's kind of, if you're smoking weed every day and being sober is the trip, it's time to reconsider. And I know when I made that video, I said it as calmly, as politely as this, as somebody who understands and has been through it, and I got so much hate because people think I'm like personally attacking them because I'm saying maybe you shouldn't smoke so much weed. Maybe it's not that good of an idea. Have you considered that maybe you should just cut it down a little bit? And it's kind of this is the other issue. People identify with it and make it their personality. Well, who am I if I'm not the guy who's high all the time? You know what I mean? People have got themselves into that mindset that I'm the guy who smokes all the weed in the group. I'm that guy. If I'm not that guy, I don't know who I am. They have this existential crisis, like Richard the Barber. Like, if I'm not the clown, like, what am I? It's that kind of. It's hard to let go of this persona you've built for yourself, this mask, this illusion of who you think you are, and when you've based your entire life around it for so long, your identity is intrinsically linked with being the guy who smokes the weed, being the stoner in the group. And I think that's the issue. People need to disassociate themselves with a plant. Like, if your entire personality revolves around a plant, like, you have no personality. You need to stop and go and find out who you really are without the plant. That's the real work. But again, it's easier just to spark up a joint and get high. Why deal with having to find out who I am? What's the point? I'll just get high instead and avoid it. That's what happens. This is the issue with it. That's the issue with cannabis. Fundamentally, it makes you okay with achieving nothing and doing nothing with your life and just being. And maybe there is a time and place for that. There's certainly some people I've met in my existence, and I've thought to myself, I think you might need to smoke a joint, because they're so living in the future that they're missing the present moment, and workaholics are a good example of that. There's those people too, and this is what I'm saying, like, it's checks and balances. I don't think it's inherently evil. I think it's a herb like any other herb, like, I'm taking black walnut, wormwood, clove and garlic extract right now in a tincture to cleanse my body of parasites. It's a plant. It's from a tree. I'm ingesting plant substances into my body to get a desired effect. It's not any different when you consider that cannabis. I think it's not smoking the cannabis itself that's the problem. It's the abuse of it and the people not being consciously aware of the effects it has on them and the justifications that come with doing it. I think you can be a much happier, healthier person when you can be sober and be happy with yourself. And that takes work. I hated who I was when I became sober. I realized that I saw myself in the mirror. The first time I saw myself for who I really was, what I've done. Sins I have to answer for, the people I've hurt, stepped on, and walked over, the attitudes I've had, and the way I presented myself in the world, and the selfishness, all of it, you know, all the shame, things I've been avoiding confronting about myself, I had to finally confront when I got sober. And it took years. It's taken years. I'm probably still dealing with this stuff. But I'm happy. I don't need a drug to be happy. I did need it back in that time of my life. You know, and that's what I'm saying is the work is worth it. It's worth it. And you can do it. If you're wondering whether or not you can let go or not, I believe in you. I believe you can do it. So try. Give it a go. So there you go. I've talked about cannabis. I answered your question. I talked to you about cannabis. There's my episode on marijuana for you, Thomas Gallagher. Maybe you needed to hear that. I don't know. Maybe someone else listening today needed to hear that. But there's my 2 cents on the matter. Take it or leave it. I know it's not much about conspiracy, but it's certainly, when it comes to spiritual warfare stuff, these are probably part of the weapons that are being used against us, spiritually speaking. You know, so it's best to be sober and be vigilant, because our adversary, the devil, wanders around like a roaring lion, seeking whomever he may devour. Let's not give him that opportunity.
I want you to get together.